Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Chad Richards, and I'm actually reporting to you live over here at a very, very raggedy vehicle. Now, if you've noticed that the word raggedy was previously used in past years with a very, very popular character named Raggedy Ann. I don't know if anyone has a Raggedy Ann in their family, but if you do have a Raggedy Ann in your family, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this raggedy van. It's a different Ann sound, okay? Anyways, to get the hood open on a raggedy van, you actually have to start out by thinking about the days like Happy Days or whatever. You think about Mr. Cool, you know what I'm saying? Fonzarelli. Anyways, what he did basically was he's like that, you know what I'm saying? And the hood pops open, okay? Does anyone else want to try that? Maybe another time. This is my video. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, look up underneath the hood. If it was extremely cold right now, then we would be able to listen to the engine and hear this sound. Do you hear it? Do you hear the noise? That's the noise of silence, ladies and gentlemen, because this vehicle right here is not in running order right now because the vehicle is not turned on, it's not ignited, the sparks have not flown to ignite the engine to make everything running. Anyways, right over here we have what's called the reserve area, okay? The reserve area, as you see, is where you take a look right here, and if you scratch and sniff, oh my gosh, he's inhaling antifreeze. Not really, ladies and gentlemen, I was just looking. Anyway, so this is the coolant area. Now remember, if the engine is very, very hot, this says never open when hot. They have it in other languages right here on the cap. Do you see the other languages? No, because it's all English. Made you look. Okay, so it says never open when hot. Check the level in the bottle. They're referring to this. This is the reserve. Doesn't really say anything about what's actually over here. This is more or less overflow. Can you say over? Anyway, so right here, we're going to take a look right over here, and this is actually where you check the engine oil. When you want to check the engine oil, you got to remember that you do not want to check the engine oil ever. Not. You have to actually check it. So you pull the dipstick. I apologize if anyone has ever called you a dipstick, but I tell you, you are not. Don't ever accept that. If anyone ever calls you a dipstick, they're really talking about checking oil. They're not really referring to anything negative, like a negative connotation against yourself, because you are special. You are very special. You are a very beautiful you. All right, so this is a dipstick right over here. So we're going to be taking the whip out, and we're going to check it. That first reading that we saw right there, it was actually way, way too sunny. So, you don't ever get your reading right on the first time that you do it, right? So anyways, I'm going to put this all the way back in. I'm not going to let it beat me. We're going to put it all the way back in. Take it. There we go. Anyways, so then I'm going to take that all the way back out. Now this time, on the second time that you check it, you'll notice right up here in the darkness, see how the oil level is very wet? See how it's very wet in this area right here? I'm not going to be like most people and touch this with my bare fingers. A lot of people would just take this and touch it with their bare fingers, and then they wipe it off. I'm a little bit different than that because I was willing to walk those extra 10 steps to a place where I was able to find a napkin in which had dryness to it, a napkin in which was a wiper, and in which I was able to wipe this clean to check it. So I was able to check this the first time, right the first time. Anyways, I'm going to wipe this sucker off. I'm going to go ahead and put that baby back in. All right. Now next, I want to be able to check the transmission fluid. Let me see if I can get some people to respond in the notes section right here. Maybe I'm going live, maybe I'm not. Anyways, if anyone can tell me, do you check the vehicle when it's not running for the transmission fluid? Absolutely not, because you will not get a good reading. Because what happens on that dipstick is the transmission fluid actually rises on the dipstick to give you an accurate reading. How does that rise? Because for the transmission fluid, you cannot check it dry. You have to check it wet. And how do you do that? You check that by having it run. Join me now while I turn the key in the ignition so that you can see this vehicle running, and then I can check the transmission fluid right over here. Come over here. Starts like a Chevy. Alright, so now that the vehicle is running, I'm going to check the transmission fluid. Okay? Now watch as I take my hand and take it into the engine compartment area, and I feel an extreme amount of pressure. That's really good. You always want to remember that this says caution. There's a fan under here for a reason. Caution, there's a fan under here for a reason. That's exactly what you need to do, is you need to make sure that you keep your fingers away from the fan area, okay? Anyway, so you take this, right, and you go ahead and you pull this transmission dipstick out. Now you're able to see that the transmission fluid is at a very, very high level. Nothing that we need to be too concerned about. Now I'm going to go ahead and put this dipstick back in, and then I'm going to check it one more time now after I've done that. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull that dipstick back out. It's very, very juicy, like the transmission has produced an extreme amount of saliva and regurgitated itself onto this dipstick and caused the transmission fluid to make it very, very wet on this dipstick. Very, very wet. Anyways, that's a good thing. Our transmission fluid is nice. Okay, so our transmission fluid is very, very nice. There we go. There we go. There you go. All right. Now that's one thing that you got to remember, is you got to make sure that your engine oil fill cap is in the sealed position. You don't want to ride around without having a cap on your oil. No caps is bad, very bad. All right, so I'm going to go over here. And I shut the vehicle off. Now I want to check some of the other fluids right here. Now if you notice, there's a couple different choices of fluid areas. Some of these things are labeled a little bit differently for those that need more instruction. All right, so right here we have what is referred to as the power steering fluid. Notice how wet it is in there. Very good. Very good. No leaks on our power steering situation there. Nice and tight. All right. So right here, this is the windshield washer fluid. It's very blue. Now notice, in reference to what we know in the sign industry, blue is not an earth tone. No, not at all. Even though the earth is composed of 90% water. The earth is composed of 90% water, but we use the word earthy tones to describe other colors. Blue is not relative to one of those colors. Alrighty. So then we're able to put the cover back on. Okay. Notice that this vehicle is actually in very, very good working order. It has a very cool feature right here. If it were nighttime, we were able to light up this light. Hold it under our chin. Anyways, right over here, we have a reeling system. We're actually able to reel that light back into place. This is a feature that you'll find in the 1992 vehicle in which this is. This is a feature that you will not find in most other vehicles. Don't hate on it. Alrighty then. So, right over here, this is actually the brake fluid reservoir. Reservoir. Can you say reservoir? Anyways, right here we're going to actually lift up on this. It's sealed. It has a snapping sound when you put it back together. So we're going to lift that up, right? And the brake fluid appears to be a little bit low. Not a good thing. We're going to make a mental note of that when we go into the store, just to see that we make sure that we purchase some brake fluid. That way when we put this back on here, we'll feel confident that when we securely fasten it, that it's going to be nice and tight and we'll have actually done something. So brake fluid is a little bit low, and why is that? Because when I'm coming to a full and complete stop out there on the Information Superhighway of America, I actually pump the brakes frequently. And by pumping the brakes frequently, we get use. Alrighty then. So right over here we have another reservoir area. And this reservoir right here, I'm not going to let it beat me. I'm going to actually be able to open it. There we go. In this area right here, we notice that our brake fluid is more full. There is actually a way of describing this. Instead of saying more full, we could say fuller. Alright, so now those are items that we've checked right there. Now let's go ahead and buy some brake fluid. And since we're going to be unattending our vehicle just for a moment, we want to make sure that we cover the hood area. Now let's go into the store. Surprising that guy let me get the door for him. Would you hold my place in line, please? Can we get some help up here?